Everyone laughed at his idea, until winter came and they begged for his help. Marcus Holland took a deep breath as he looked at the faces of disbelief in the City Hall meeting room. His proposal to build wooden structures around the town's homes had been met with laughter and sarcastic comments from the residents present at the community meeting. It was then that Mr. Benjamin, owner of the largest building supply store in the region, stood up and said in a mocking tone that it was the most ridiculous idea he had ever heard in his 60 years of life. "Marcus, with all due respect, you want us to turn our town into an Indian village?" Benjamin provoked, drawing loud laughter from the audience. "Wooden structures, that's a thing of the past," someone shouted from the back of the room. Marcus felt his face grow hot. 40 years of engineering, dozens of successful projects, and now he was being treated like a senile old man. He had studied the meteorological data from the last 5 years. He knew this winter would be different, harsher, more dangerous. "You don't understand," he tried to explain again, raising his voice over the laughter. "The town's electric heating systems won't handle an overload. If the winter is as severe as the forecasts indicate—" "Forecasts?" interrupted Mrs. Dorothy, the City Hall secretary. "Have you become a fortune teller now, Marcus? Here in St. Benedict of the South, we've always gotten through winter just fine. We don't need extra protection." Marcus's wife, Helen, was sitting in the front row, and he could see the tension on her face. She had tried to dissuade him from presenting the proposal publicly. "Let it go, Marcus. No one's going to listen to you anyway," she had said on the morning of that rainy Tuesday in March. Mayor Thomas Campbell banged the gavel on the table, calling for silence. "Well, folks, I think we've all heard Mr. Marcus's proposal. Let's vote. Who is in favor of building these protective structures?" Only 3 hands went up in the crowded room. One was Helen's, out of loyalty. The other 2 belonged to David Mitchell, a young 25-year-old carpenter, and his mother, Mrs. Margaret. "And who is against?" A forest of hands shot up, accompanied by murmurs of approval. "Decided then. The proposal is rejected," declared the mayor. "Next item of business." Marcus left the meeting feeling like he'd been run over by a train. Helen walked beside him in silence until they reached the City Hall parking lot. It was a still, warm March night, but he could feel in the air that changes were coming. "Let's go home," said Helen, lightly touching his arm. "Forget about it, Marcus. You tried to warn them. Now the responsibility is theirs." But Marcus couldn't forget. Throughout his career as a civil engineer, he had learned that when everyone said something couldn't be done, it was usually because no one had really tried. When he designed the bridge over Eagle River 15 years earlier, they had also called him crazy. When he suggested a new drainage system for downtown, they said it was money down the drain, and always, he had been right. The next morning, Marcus was in his backyard when David Mitchell appeared at the fence. "Mr. Marcus, can I talk to you?" "Of course, David. Come in." The young man was the son of Mrs. Margaret, a 62-year-old lady who worked as a cleaner at the public school. David had inherited the manual skills of his late father and got by doing small carpentry jobs around town. "I wanted to talk about that idea of yours yesterday, about the wooden structures." Marcus poured some coffee on the back porch of his house. The property was on a hill, offering a panoramic view of the 15,000-person town nestled in the valley between the mountains. "Go ahead, David. It's just that my grandmother always used to tell some stories, you know. She lived out in the countryside on a farm in the mountains. She said her grandfather used to build these wooden protections around the house every winter, called them windbreaks." Marcus leaned forward, interested. "Is your grandmother still alive?" "No, sir. She passed away 2 years ago, but I remember the stories well. She said that without those protections, the family couldn't get through the winter. The cold cut like a knife, she said. And do you believe in my proposal?" David hesitated for a moment, looking at the mountains in the distance. "Mr. Marcus, I work outside year-round. I do repairs, construction, that sort of thing, and I can tell you there's something different in the air this year. The animals are acting strange. The trees are changing their leaves earlier. Something's coming." "What do you mean by that?" "That if you want to build one of these structures on your house, I'll help, for free, just to see if it works." Marcus felt immense relief. Finally, someone who took him seriously. David, aren't you afraid of what others will say? My mother always says it's better to be embarrassed than to be cold, the young man replied, smiling. And if it works, at least we know we tried to help. That afternoon, Marcus showed David the technical drawings he had prepared. The idea was simple but ingenious, a wooden structure that worked like a second outer wall, creating an insulating layer of air around the house. The planks would be positioned to break the icy wind and keep the heat inside. How much will it cost? Asked David. With cheap lumber and doing it ourselves, about $3,000. The problem is, I have to use my savings. Helen is not happy about this at all. And if it fails? Marcus looked at the drawings, then at the sky, which already showed some unusual clouds. If it fails, I'll be broke, and everyone will say I'm a crazy old man. But if it works, we might save the whole town, David finished. That same week they began buying materials. Marcus had his first big argument with Helen when she discovered he had withdrawn $5,000 from their savings. Marcus Holland, have you completely lost your mind? Helen shouted in the kitchen, holding the bank statement. $5,000, our savings. Helen, please, listen to me. No, you were humiliated in that meeting, and now you want to prove you're right by spending our money. What if you're wrong? What if this winter is normal like all the others? What if I'm right? What if our house is the only one in town that doesn't suffer from the cold? Helen slammed her hand on the kitchen table. Then we'll be the only fools who spent $5,000 on nonsense. Marcus, you're 72. At your age, you should be enjoying retirement, not dreaming up crazy projects. I can't just stand by and watch a disaster coming and do nothing. Disaster? What disaster, Marcus? It's just a winter. The argument lasted for 3 days. Helen even threatened to go live with their daughter Jessica, who lived in Charlotte with her husband and 2 children. If you don't drop this obsession, I'm leaving. 43 years of marriage, Marcus. I won't throw away our peace over a fixation. But Marcus couldn't give up. Every morning he woke up looking at the thermometer and the sky. March temperatures were lower than normal. April arrived with icy winds from the south. Still, the town went about its normal life. Construction of the structure began in the first week of May. David showed up every day after work, and on weekends they worked all day. The structure took shape. Wooden posts driven into the ground, horizontal beams connecting everything, and vertical planks creating an outer wall. The neighbors would stop to watch the construction. Some made comments out loud, purposely so Marcus could hear. "Look at that ugly thing," commented Mrs. Janet, who lived in the house next door. "Looks like a giant chicken coop," laughed her husband. "The man spent a fortune to turn his house into a stilt house," added the neighbor from the corner. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the 3rd week of May, a journalist from the local newspaper showed up. Someone had sent a photo of the construction to the newsroom, and now they wanted to do a story on Marcus Holland's exotic project. "Mr. Marcus, can you explain what you're building here?" "It's protection against extreme cold, an insulating barrier that will keep my house warm during the winter." "And why do you think this is necessary? St. Benedict of the South has never had serious problems with the cold." "Because this winter will be different. Climate conditions are changing." The journalist noted everything down with a smirk on his face. The story came out 3 days later under the headline, "Retired Engineer Builds Fortress Against the Cold." The text openly ridiculed the project, calling it a medieval solution to modern problems. Marcus was devastated when he read the report. Helen, who was already irritated with the whole situation, was furious. "Now you've done it! Now you're the laughingstock of the whole town," she shouted, throwing the newspaper on the table. "Marcus, this has to stop. You're making us a laughingstock." "Helen, no! Enough! Either you stop this madness or I'm leaving for Charlotte. I'm serious." That night, Marcus stayed alone in the backyard looking at the half-finished structure. For the first time since he had started the project, he felt doubts. What if Helen was right? What if he was really going crazy? David showed up the next day as usual, but noticed something was different. "Mr. Marcus, are you all right?" "David, did you read the newspaper?" "Yes, I did. Nonsense. The guy didn't even really understand what we're doing." "The whole town read it. Now I'm officially the crazy guy who builds fortresses. So what? Do you care what those people think? Marcus sighed. It's not just that, David. It's my wife. She's threatening to leave. Ah, I see, said David, putting his tools down. Look, Mr. Marcus, I can't make this decision for you, but can I tell you something? Go ahead. Yesterday I talked to a guy who works at the power company. He said the city's system hasn't been updated in 10 years. If there's a big overload, there will be problems. And everyone knows that in winter, energy consumption skyrockets. He really said that? He did. And more, the grid's transformers are old. If several burn out at the same time, it will take days to get replacement parts. This information changed everything for Marcus. It wasn't just his weather predictions. There was a real and concrete problem with the city's infrastructure. David, would you be willing to go with me to talk to this guy from the power company? Of course. His name is Brian. He's worked there for 15 years. The next day they met Brian at a discreet bar downtown. The technician, a 40-year-old man with a tired face, confirmed Marcus's suspicions. The situation really is complicated, said Brian, drinking a beer. The electrical grid here is a patchwork. It works fine in the summer, when everyone uses little. But in winter... What happens in winter? Asked Marcus. Everyone turns on electric heaters, warm air conditioning, space heaters. Consumption triples, and our grid can't handle it. Why doesn't the company do anything? Brian gave a bitter laugh. Because it's expensive and St. Benedict of the South is a small town. It's not profitable to invest here. They prefer to leave things as they are and hope nothing goes wrong. And if it does, then everyone's left in the dark and the cold until they can fix it. It could last for days. Marcus felt a chill down his spine. His predictions were coming true. The problem wasn't just meteorological, it was also infrastructural. Brian, do you think we should notify City Hall? I already have. Several times. The mayor always says he'll take care of it, but never does anything. Politics, right? They only act when the problem makes the news. That night, Marcus had another difficult conversation with Helen. Helen, I know you're tired of all this, but I just found out the city's electrical grid is in terrible shape. If the power goes out this winter, a lot of people will suffer. And what does that have to do with your crazy construction? If our house is protected by the wooden structure, we won't depend so much on electricity. The thermal insulation will keep the heat even without a heater. Helen was silent for a moment. Marcus, have you ever thought that maybe you're overreacting? That maybe this winter will be normal like all the others? Yes, I've thought about it. But what if it's not? What if I'm right? Helen, I can't live knowing I could help people and did nothing. But nobody wants your help, Marcus. You saw what happened at the meeting. They laughed in your face. Today they laugh, but when they need help, they'll come to me. Helen shook her head. If you keep this up, I'm leaving. I'm serious. Helen, please. No, Marcus. 43 years of marriage. I've always supported your projects, your ideas. But this time you've gone too far. Choose your obsession or me. Marcus stayed awake all night. The hardest decision of his life was before him. On one side, the woman he had loved for over 4 decades. On the other, a conviction so strong it seemed to burn inside him. The next morning, David arrived as always, ready to work. Shall we continue, Mr. Marcus? Marcus looked at the nearly finished structure, then at the bedroom window where Helen was still sleeping. Let's finish it, David, come what may. The construction took another 2 weeks to complete. When they finished, Marcus's house was completely surrounded by a wooden structure that looked like a mix between a giant fence and a shed. The appearance was odd, but functional. Helen kept her threat. In the last week of May, she packed her bags and went to Charlotte to stay with their daughter, Jessica. I hope your structure keeps you warm, she said before boarding the bus, because I won't be here for that. Marcus was left alone in the house he had shared with Helen for so many years. For the first time since starting the project, he wondered if he had made the right choice. May ended with mild temperatures. June arrived just like previous years. The neighbors kept making jokes about Marcus's fortress house. The local journalist wrote 2 more articles satirizing the project. David kept showing up every day, no longer to work on the structure, but to keep Marcus company. "How are you feeling?" he asked on a June afternoon. "Alone," admitted Marcus, and starting to think maybe I was wrong after all. "Mr. Marcus, can I say something?" "Of course." "My grandmother always said that wise men are misunderstood by fools, and that when the truth comes out, the fools are the first to run after the wise men. Your grandmother was a wise woman. Yes, she was. And she also said that those who do the right thing are never truly alone." In July, the first weather forecasts began to change. A climate research center from South Carolina published an alert about a possible cold front coming from Canada that could be more intense than normal. Marcus cut the news article out of the paper and stuck it on the refrigerator. It was the first public validation of his predictions. 1 week later, the temperature in St. Benedict of the South dropped 10 degrees in 2 days. Thermometers read 2 degrees below zero on a July morning, something unusual for the time of year. People started turning on heaters earlier than usual. Electricity consumption skyrocketed. Brian, the technician from the power company, called Marcus. "Mr. Marcus, this is Brian. Remember me?" "Of course, Brian. How are you?" "Worried. The grid is already overloaded and we haven't even hit the peak of winter yet. 2 transformers burned out in the west zone yesterday." "Were you able to fix them?" "We were, but it was tough, and we're still just at the beginning. If things get really tight, what do you think will happen? I think your wooden structure is going to be the smartest thing in this city." That week, Marcus received a call from Jessica, his daughter. "Dad, how are you?" "Fine, honey. Missing your mother, but fine." "Dad, she's really upset. She says you chose a crazy construction over her." "It's not quite like that, Jessica. It's complicated to explain." "Dad, can't you stop this obsession? Go back to normal." Marcus looked out the window at his wooden structure. Even in that July cold, the house was warm without needing a heater. "Jessica, how's the cold there in Charlotte?" "Terrible, Dad. It's very cold. We had to buy 2 electric heaters. The electricity bill is going to be high this month." "And at home, is it hard to keep it heated?" "Yes, it is. The house is big and the heating can't warm everything, especially the bedrooms." "Why do you ask?" "Just curiosity, honey." But it wasn't curiosity, it was confirmation. If in Charlotte, a big city with better infrastructure, there were already problems, St. Benedict of the South was in trouble. At the end of July, David showed up, agitated. "Mr. Marcus, have you seen what's happening?" "What is it, David?" "A blizzard is coming, a real blizzard. The Weather Institute issued a red alert. It's going to snow for 3 days straight." Marcus felt his heart race. A blizzard in St. Benedict of the South was a rare event. The last one had happened 15 years before and lasted only a few hours. "When will it start?" "Tomorrow night. And get this." David showed his phone. "The forecast is for a temperature of 12 degrees below zero." 12 below? David, that's dangerous. Deadly, even. That night, Marcus could barely sleep. Everything he had predicted was coming true. The blizzard would arrive Saturday morning and last until Monday. 3 days of extreme cold. On Saturday morning, the first snowflakes began to fall. By 10 a.m., it already covered the ground. By noon, the snow was already 6 inches high. Marcus was on the back porch, observing the city below. He could see smoke coming from the chimneys of all the houses. Everyone had turned their heating to maximum. At 2 in the afternoon, the house lights flickered. Then they flickered again. At 3 p.m., the entire neighborhood lost power. Marcus looked at the thermometer, 8 degrees below zero, and falling. Outside his wooden structure, the cold was biting, but inside, protected by the insulating barrier, the temperature was pleasant. The structure was working exactly as planned. 10 minutes after the power went out, the first neighbor knocked on the door. It was Mrs. Janet, the same one who had made fun of the construction. "Mr. Marcus, sorry to bother you. It's just, well, our house is getting very cold. My husband is feeling sick. You wouldn't happen to have a gas heater to lend, would you?" Marcus looked at the woman who was shivering from the cold even in a heavy coat. "Mrs. Janet, I don't have a gas heater, but I can offer something better. Please come in." She entered Marcus's house and stopped, surprised. It was warm, pleasantly warm. But how? You have no power here either, right? That's right. But the wooden structure keeps the heat insulated. It works like a giant coat for the house. Mrs. Janet looked around, incredulous. Mr. Marcus, I apologize. I made fun of your construction. I thought it was nonsense. No need to apologize, Mrs. Janet. I brought your husband. He can stay here until the power comes back. 15 minutes later, another neighbor knocked on the door. Then another. And another. Within 2 hours, Marcus's house was full of neighbors who had mocked his project, all now begging for shelter against the extreme cold. David arrived carrying his mother, Mrs. Margaret. Mr. Marcus, can I bring my mother? She is very cold at our house. Of course, David, bring everyone who needs it. By 6 in the evening, there were 22 people in Marcus's house, entire families who couldn't keep warm in their homes without electricity. The snow kept falling outside. The temperature had reached 12 degrees below zero, as predicted. Brian, the technician from the electric company, arrived walking through the snow. Mr. Marcus, the situation is critical. 8 transformers burned out. There won't be power for at least 3 days. 3 days? Asked Mrs. Janet, frightened. At least. Maybe a week. We depend on parts that come from Charleston, and with this blizzard the roads are blocked. A heavy silence filled the room. 22 people, including 3 children, would need to survive a week without electric heating in temperatures of 12 degrees below zero. Everyone, said Marcus. My house can shelter everyone for now. But we need to think of a bigger solution. What kind of solution? Asked David. Build more structures like this one, quickly. Mr. Benjamin, the owner of the hardware store, who was sitting in a corner of the room, stood up. Mr. Marcus, I need to speak with you. They went to the kitchen, away from the others. Mr. Marcus, I apologize. I belittled your idea at the meeting. I thought it was foolish. I understand, Mr. Benjamin. No, you don't understand. I didn't mock it because I thought it was foolish. I mocked it because I have contracts with electric heater suppliers. Your idea was going to hurt my sales. Marcus was surprised by the confession. Mr. Benjamin, let me finish. Now I see that I put money ahead of people's safety, and that is wrong. Benjamin took a deep breath. I want to help. I have wood in the store's inventory, a lot of wood, and tools. I can donate everything to build these structures in other houses. Mr. Benjamin, that is very generous, but it's not generosity. It's an obligation. If someone gets hurt because of the cold and I have materials sitting in the store, I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. They returned to the room, and Benjamin announced his proposal to everyone. The reaction was immediate, relief mixed with hope. But how are we going to build with all this snow? Asked Mrs. Dorothy, the City Hall secretary. We'll have to work even with the snow, replied David. There's no choice. How many people know how to work with wood? Asked Marcus. 5 men raised their hands, including David. And how many houses need urgent protection? Brian did the math mentally. The ones with small children or sick elderly are about 40. The others can wait a few days. Then let's start with the 40, decided Marcus. That night, even with the blizzard outside, they made the plan. They would divide into 5 construction teams, each responsible for 8 houses. They would work in shifts to make the most of the daylight. Benjamin would handle material distribution. David would coordinate the teams. Marcus would supervise the technical aspects. Sunday morning, despite the snow that kept falling, the constructions began. It was heavy and dangerous work. The cold cut through even with gloves and coats. But the urgency of the situation gave strength to everyone. The first structure was completed by Sunday evening. It was a simple, hastily built construction, but functional. The family tested it immediately. The indoor temperature rose 15 degrees in 2 hours. It really works, shouted the homeowner, crying with relief. The news spread quickly. More volunteers appeared, wanting to help with the constructions. By Monday, when the blizzard finally stopped, there were already 15 structures ready. The families in these houses could stay warm even without electricity. But there was still a problem. Food. With the roads blocked and stores closed, the town's supplies were running out. That's when Mrs. Margaret had an idea. "What if we made a community kitchen?" she suggested. "How so?" asked Marcus. "We gather all the food the families have at home. We cook in just one house using a wood stove. That way we save fuel and everyone eats a hot meal." The idea was accepted immediately. They chose Mrs. Dorothy's house, which had a large wood stove in the kitchen. For the next 3 days, while the teams continued building structures, the women organized themselves to prepare collective meals. They created a rotation system. Each family contributed ingredients and labor. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On Wednesday, an unexpected event happened. A television crew from Charlotte managed to reach St. Benedict of the South. They had come to do a story on the damage from the blizzard, but found something completely different. "You're telling me a resident predicted this situation and was ignored by the city?" asked the reporter. "Exactly," replied Mrs. Janet, "and not just predicted, he created a solution that is saving everyone." The interview with Marcus was moving. He patiently explained how he had reached the conclusion that the winter would be severe, how he had developed the wooden structure solution, and how he had been ridiculed for it. "And now, Mr. Marcus, how do you feel seeing you were right?" "I don't feel victorious," he replied. "I feel sad that it was necessary to reach this point for people to believe. Many people suffered unnecessarily. But you saved the town. I didn't save it alone. It was a collective effort. When people finally understood the gravity of the situation, they worked together admirably." The report aired on the evening news and caused a national impact. The story of the prophet engineer who had saved an entire town became news across the country. On Thursday, Helen called from Charlotte. "Marcus, I saw the report on television." "Helen," her voice sounded different, less irritated, more emotional. "You were right, weren't you? All along you were right." "Helen, do you want to come back?" "Yes, I do. But there's something I need to say." "Go ahead." "I'm sorry for not believing in you, for abandoning you when you most needed support, for putting my pride ahead of our marriage." Marcus felt tears in his eyes. "Helen, you were the most important person in my life. When you left, I wondered if I had made the right choice. And now? Do you still wonder? Now I know both things were important. You and saving people. I should have found a way to do both. Marcus, you did what you thought was right, and in the end, you were right. Now I'm coming back, and we'll finish this story together." Helen returned on Friday. The reunion was emotional, witnessed by all the neighbors who now respected and admired Marcus. But the story didn't end there. With the national impact of the report, engineers, architects, and researchers interested in studying and improving the wooden structure method began arriving in St. Benedict of the South. An engineering university from North Carolina proposed a partnership to develop a more sophisticated version of the system. A building materials company offered to mass-produce the prefabricated components to facilitate installation. The state government created an incentive program for small towns to implement the system. But what moved Marcus the most was a letter he received from a town in the interior of South Carolina. "Mr. Marcus, we are a town of 8,000 inhabitants that suffered from the same problem as you. We saw your report on television and decided to implement your system before the next winter arrives. We managed to build structures for 300 families. We want to thank you for sharing your idea and saving not only your town, but ours as well." David, who had become Marcus's right-hand man throughout the entire project, received a scholarship to study engineering. "Mr. Marcus, this is a dream come true," he said, holding the university letter. "David, you deserve it. You've been my partner since day one. And I'll continue to be. I'll study engineering, but I want to work on projects like this, projects that help ordinary people. They'll need engineers like that. The world is changing, David. Problems like this will appear more often." Mrs. Margaret, David's mother, was hired by the City Hall to coordinate the Community Kitchens program that had emerged during the crisis. The program became permanent, helping families in financial difficulty. Mr. Benjamin transformed his store into a specialist in materials for insulating structures. Business flourished, and he hired 5 new employees. Brian, the technician from the electric company, was promoted to regional supervisor and became responsible for modernizing the electrical grids of several small towns. But it was Mrs. Janet who surprised everyone the most. The same woman who had mocked Marcus's idea became a passionate advocate for the project. She organized a group of women to teach residential heating techniques in other towns. "Mr. Marcus," she said one September afternoon as winter was already ending, "I learned an important lesson from this story." "What was it, Mrs. Janet?" "That sometimes the person who seems to be wrong is the only one who is right, and that laughing at others' ideas can be very dangerous." In October, the City Hall organized an official ceremony to honor Marcus. Mayor Thomas Campbell, who had presided over the meeting where the proposal was rejected, gave a speech of public apology. "Citizens of St. Benedict of the South, today we are here to acknowledge a serious mistake we made as a community. When Mr. Marcus Holland presented us with his proposal, we should have listened with attention and respect. Instead, we allowed prejudices and personal interests to prevent a serious discussion about a real problem." The mayor looked at Marcus, who was seated in the front row with Helen. "Mr. Marcus, on behalf of the entire town, I apologize. Your project saved hundreds of families. Your persistence and courage are an example to us all, and your generosity in helping even those who ridiculed you shows the kind of man you are." The ceremony ended with the presentation of an honor medal of merit and the announcement that the street where Marcus lived would be renamed Engineer Marcus Holland Street. But the tribute that moved Marcus the most happened unexpectedly. It was a November afternoon when he was in the backyard tending the garden. Helen was preparing lunch in the kitchen. Suddenly a child appeared at the fence. It was Johnny, Mrs. Dorothy's grandson, just 7 years old. "Mr. Marcus?" "Hi, Johnny. How are you?" "Sir, I wanted to say thank you." "Thank me for what, son?" "My grandma said if it weren't for you I could have gotten sick this winter, or even—" The boy didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. "No need to thank me, Johnny. It was a pleasure to help." "Mr. Marcus, when I grow up I want to be just like you. I want to help people too." Marcus knelt down to be at the boy's eye level. "Johnny, do you know the secret to helping people?" "What is it?" "Never stop believing you can make a difference, even when everyone says you're wrong. Even when they laugh at us. Especially when they laugh at us." That evening, Marcus was on the back porch with Helen, watching the city lights below. Now there were wooden structures on almost every house. What had begun as one man's project had become a feature of the entire community. "Helen, do you regret anything?" "I regret taking so long to come back. And you?" "I regret not insisting more that you stay." "Marcus, can I say something?" "Of course." "I'm proud of you. Not just for the project, but for how you handled everything. You didn't hold a grudge against anyone. You even helped those who were cruel to you." "Helen, holding a grudge is like carrying a heavy stone. It only hurts the one who carries it." "Where did you learn that?" "From you in 43 years of marriage." They stayed silent for a while, appreciating the view and each other's company. "Marcus?" "Yes." "What are we going to do now?" "Now we're going to enjoy our retirement. For real this time." "And if another problem comes up that needs solving?" Marcus smiled. "Then we'll solve it together." 1 year after the first winter with the wooden structures, St. Benedict of the South had become a national example of preparedness for climate emergencies. The city received visits from delegations of other municipalities interested in implementing similar systems. The St. Benedict model was adopted by more than 50 small towns in the south of the United States. Marcus was invited to give lectures at universities and technical events. He always brought David along, introducing him as the project's co-author. Helen got involved with a group of retired engineers' wives who organized community solidarity activities. They created a support network for families in need that became a model for other cities. But perhaps the most important change was in the community's own mindset. St. Benedict of the South had learned that innovation can come from anywhere, that seemingly simple ideas can be powerful, and that listening to each other is fundamental. The City Hall's monthly community meeting, which used to be poorly attended, was now packed. People had discovered the value of participating in the decisions that affected their lives. David graduated in engineering 5 years later and returned to St. Benedict of the South to work as a technical advisor for the City Hall. His first proposal was to create an early weather warning system integrated with community emergency plans. "Mr. Marcus," he said on the day of the project presentation, "I learned that prevention is always better than a cure." That's the most important lesson in engineering, David. Mrs. Margaret, at 70 years old, became a respected community leader. She coordinated not only the community kitchens, but also senior support groups and youth training programs. Mr. Benjamin expanded his business to other cities, always focusing on products that promoted sustainability and emergency preparedness. He created jobs for dozens of people and became an example of a socially responsible entrepreneur. Brian left the electric company and opened his own consulting firm for energy infrastructure in small towns. His practical knowledge, combined with the experience of the crisis in St. Benedict of the South, made him highly sought after. Mrs. Janet specialized in community education on emergency preparedness. She traveled to other cities teaching communities how to organize before problems occurred. "The best lesson I learned," she would say in her lectures, "is that we should always listen to the most experienced people, especially when they tell us things we don't want to hear." Johnny, the boy who had thanked Marcus, became a teenager interested in science. Whenever he had doubts about math or physics, he would seek out Marcus to talk. "Mr. Marcus," he said one Saturday afternoon when he was 14, "do you still think I can make a difference when I grow up?" "Johnny, you're already making a difference. Every young person who is interested in science and wants to help people is already changing the world." "How so?" "Because you will be the next one to have ideas that everyone will think are crazy. And when that happens, you'll remember this conversation and you won't give up." 10 years after the first winter of the wooden structures, St. Benedict of the South was considered one of the best prepared cities in the United States to face climate emergencies. The system had been improved and modernized, but the basic principles remained the same: simplicity, efficiency, and preparation in advance. Marcus, now 82, remained active in the community. His mornings were dedicated to walking through the city, observing the improvements and talking with residents. Helen, at 80, coordinated a book club for seniors and a knitting group that produced clothes to donate to families in need. David, who had graduated 5 years prior, had married and had a young son. He lived 2 blocks from Marcus and Helen's house and visited the couple at least 3 times a week. "Mr. Marcus," he said during one of these visits, "I want you to know that everything I am today, I owe to you. David, you are what you are on your own merit. I just gave a little guidance. It wasn't little, it was fundamental. You taught me that doing the right thing is worth more than being popular. And you learned the most important lesson, that knowledge without the courage to apply it is useless." One autumn afternoon, Marcus received a letter from a town in rural Virginia. "Mr. Marcus, our town implemented your system 3 years ago. This past winter, we faced a cold wave that broke historical records. Thanks to the protective structures, no family suffered from the extreme cold. We want to thank you for sharing your idea and invite you to visit our town." Invitations like this arrived regularly. Marcus was always moved to learn that his idea had helped people he didn't even know in places he had never been. "Helen," he said, showing her the letter, "I still can't believe a simple idea has spread so far." "Marcus, good ideas are like seeds. When they fall on fertile ground, they grow and bear fruit. And what was the fertile ground? People's need, and your persistence in not giving up." One evening, Marcus and Helen were on the porch talking about the future when Helen asked an unexpected question. "Marcus, if you could go back in time, would you do anything differently?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I would try to find a way to convince people without them having to suffer first." "And do you think that would be possible?" "I don't know. People have a hard time believing in problems they haven't yet experienced. Then perhaps the experience was necessary. Perhaps. But it's sad that it's always this way. Helen took her husband's hand. Marcus, what matters is that when it was necessary, you were prepared, and when people needed it, you helped. You hold no grudges, you asked for nothing in return. That is rare. Helen, do you know why I did all this? Why? Because I always remembered what my father used to say. Marcus, knowledge that isn't shared is wasted knowledge. Your father was a wise man. Yes, he was. And he also said that life only has meaning when we use what we know to help those in need. 15 years after the first blizzard, St. Benedict of the South was being studied by universities worldwide as an example of how small communities can adapt to climate challenges. The St. Benedict model had been implemented in over 200 cities, not only in the United States, but also in other countries in North America. Marcus, now 87 years old, had become an internationally respected figure. He received honorary degrees from 2 universities and was decorated by the federal government. But what made him most proud were the small daily achievements, seeing families living comfortably in winter, young people interested in science, and a community that had learned to value innovative ideas. David, now a father of 2, had become mayor of St. Benedict of the South. His administration focused on sustainability, emergency preparedness, and community development. Mr. Marcus, he said on Inauguration Day, I want you to know that I will govern following the principles I learned from you. What principles, David? Listen to everyone, especially those with different ideas. Always think of the common good. And never forget that simple solutions are sometimes the best. Johnny, who was now 22, was finishing his engineering degree. He had chosen to specialize in emergency and sustainability projects. Mr. Marcus, he said during a visit, I want you to know that you changed my life. How so, Johnny? When I was a child and saw how you helped everyone, I decided I wanted to be like that. I want to use engineering to solve people's problems. And you will, Johnny. You have the heart for it. Mr. Marcus, can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you have any advice for my career? Marcus thought carefully before answering. Johnny, always remember that technology serves to improve people's lives, not to complicate them. And when everyone says your idea won't work, that might be exactly why it will. And if I'm afraid to try, then you remember that fear is normal, but it can't be a reason not to do what's right. One spring morning, Marcus was in the backyard when he received an unexpected visit. It was a group of university students from various countries who were researching community solutions for climate emergencies. Professor Holland, said a young French engineer, we came from far away to meet you in person. Please just call me Marcus. Professor is too formal. Mr. Marcus, said a Mexican student, we want to know how you found the courage to insist on your idea when everyone said you were wrong. Marcus served coffee for everyone on the porch and sat down to talk. Do you know what the secret was? What? They asked in unison. I wasn't trying to prove I was smarter than others. I was trying to save people. When your motivation is genuine, courage appears naturally. And if it had gone wrong? Asked the French woman. If it had gone wrong, at least I would know I tried. What I couldn't live with would be knowing I could have helped and did nothing. Mr. Marcus, said the Mexican student, do you have any advice for our generation? Yes. The world is changing very quickly. You will face problems my generation can't even imagine. But remember, solutions don't need to be complicated to be effective. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best. And how do you know when an idea is worth pursuing? Asked a Brazilian student. When it solves a real problem for real people. If your idea only impresses other engineers but doesn't help anyone, forget it. If it's simple but saves lives, stick with it. The conversation lasted all morning. When the students left, they left Marcus with a good feeling. The new generation was interested in using knowledge to help people, not just to make money or impress colleagues. Helen appeared with more coffee. How was the talk with the young people? Very good. It gave me hope for the future. Why? Because they're asking the right questions. They didn't ask how to make money with engineering. They asked how to help people with engineering. Is the difference big? It's all the difference in the world, Helen. That afternoon, Marcus decided to take a walk through the city. It was something he did regularly, but this time he wanted to observe everything with special attention. He passed by the school where Mrs. Margaret now taught traditional home economics techniques to the children. Through the window, he saw the children learning how to make preserves and save energy. He passed by Mr. Benjamin's store, which had expanded and now sold sustainable materials for the entire region. Business was brisk, with people from several neighboring towns coming to buy. He passed by Brian's company, which had grown and now employed 15 people. Through the window, he could see young engineers working on projects for other communities. He passed by City Hall, where David was receiving a delegation of mayors from other cities interested in implementing similar programs. Lastly, he passed by Mrs. Janet's house, which now coordinated a community center where people of all ages learned useful skills for emergencies. Each place he visited showed how a simple idea had transformed into a profound and lasting change in the community. When he got home, Helen was preparing dinner. "How was the walk?" "Moving. I could see how much things have changed. For the better. For much better. The town learned to take care of itself." During dinner, they talked about plans for the future. "Helen, I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" "I want to write a book telling our story." "Why?" "So other people know it's possible to make a difference, that an ordinary person with a simple idea can change an entire community." "Do you think anyone will be interested?" "I think so, especially young people who are starting their careers. They need to know that engineering isn't just about building beautiful or complicated things. It's about solving people's problems." "And what will the book be like?" "I'll tell everything, from the first meeting where I was ridiculed to the present day, the difficulties, the doubts, the moments I thought about giving up. And the ending? The ending is that it's worth fighting for what you believe in, even when it seems impossible." Helen smiled. "I like the idea. Can I help?" "Of course. You lived through all of this with me. Your perspective is important too." They started working on the book the following week. Every morning after coffee, they would sit on the porch with paper and pen to record their memories. "Helen, do you remember what you felt when you saw me being ridiculed at the meeting?" "I remember. I was angry at the people, but I was also afraid you were getting into unnecessary trouble. And when you left for Charlotte," Helen was silent for a moment, "it was the hardest decision I've ever made. I was torn between supporting you and protecting our peace and quiet." "And what made you come back?" "When I saw on television that you were right, that your idea was saving people, I felt pride and shame at the same time." "Shame, why?" "For doubting you, for choosing safety over courage." "Helen, you shouldn't feel bad about that. I understand why you were scared. But now I know that when someone we love is fighting for a just cause, we have to stand by that person, even when it seems crazy." The book took 6 months to be ready. They told the story in a simple and honest way, without romanticizing the difficulties or dramatizing the successes. The title was Helen's suggestion, the idea nobody wanted to hear. When they finished, they sent the manuscript to a small publisher that specialized in technical books. To their surprise, the reply came in 2 weeks. They wanted to publish it. "Marcus," said Helen, reading the publisher's letter, "they want to publish the book." "Really? I can't believe it. And look, they want you to give lectures to promote the launch." "Lectures? Helen, I'm 87 years old. I don't know if I have the energy to travel around giving lectures." "You don't need to travel. You can do it right here in our town. People who are interested can come here." The idea worked. The book launch was held at the community center in St. Benedict of the South. People came from several cities, including many of the students who had visited Marcus previously. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Marcus on launch day, "this book is not about me, it's about the power of communities when they decide to work together." "Mr. Marcus," someone from the audience asked, "what is the main message of the book?" "That we all have knowledge and skills that can help other people. The problem is that sometimes we keep that knowledge to ourselves, or we become afraid to share it. And how do we overcome that fear?" by remembering that the worst that can happen is people laughing at our idea, but the best that can happen is saving lives. The book became an unexpected success. It sold over 10,000 copies in the first year and was translated into Spanish and English. Marcus began receiving letters from readers all over the world. Each letter told a story of someone who had been inspired to implement their own idea after reading the book. One letter that moved him particularly came from a young engineer from Colombia. "Mr. Marcus, I read your book and identified a lot with your story. I work in a small town in the Appalachian Mountains where people suffer from extreme cold. I developed a simple and cheap solar heating system, but no one believes it works. After reading your book, I decided to keep trying. I've already convinced 3 families to test the system. If it works, I will push to implement it in the entire town. Thank you for giving me courage." "Helen," said Marcus, showing the letter, "our story is inspiring other people not to give up." "That's wonderful, Marcus. It's as if our experience is multiplying. You know what moves me the most? It's that they are young people. The new generation is not making the same mistakes we made." "What mistakes?" "The mistake of thinking that innovation can only come from important places or famous people. They are learning that good ideas can come from anywhere." At 90 years old, Marcus remained active but had reduced his activities. He spent his days reading, writing letters to readers of the book, and receiving visits from people interested in meeting him. Helen, at 88 years old, still coordinated the book club and helped at the community center. Her energy and willingness surprised everyone. David, now mayor for 5 years, had transformed St. Benedict of the South into a national reference in sustainability and emergency preparedness. The town received delegations from other countries interested in learning from the local experience. Johnny, with a degree in engineering, had started working for a non-governmental organization that brought simple technical solutions to rural communities. He visited Marcus regularly to share his experiences. "Mr. Marcus," he said during one of those visits, "I managed to implement rainwater harvesting systems in 15 remote villages. They're simple systems based on the principles I learned from you." "What principles, Johnny?" "Simplicity, efficiency, and using local materials. And most importantly, always listen to the community people before proposing any solution." "You're on the right path. How did people receive your ideas?" "At first, with distrust. But after they saw it working, they got excited. Now they themselves are teaching other villages." "That's the best part, Johnny. When people take ownership of the idea and spread it on their own." One autumn afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected call. It was a television producer from New York interested in making a documentary about his story. "Mr. Marcus, we would like to film a documentary about you and about how St. Benedict of the South was transformed." "A documentary? What for?" "To show the United States that innovative solutions can come from anywhere, and that a determined person can really make a difference. But I'm nobody special. I'm just a retired engineer who had an idea." "Exactly. That's what we want to show, that anyone can have an idea that changes everything." Marcus talked to Helen about the proposal. "What do you think, Helen?" "I think it could be good. If our story inspires more people, it's worth it. But they'll want to film here at home, interview the neighbors, all that commotion." "Marcus, you wrote a book exactly for this, to inspire other people. The documentary is just a way to reach even more people." Marcus agreed to do the documentary. The film crew spent a week in St. Benedict of the South, interviewing all the people involved in the original story. Mrs. Janet, now 75, gave an emotional testimony. "I was one of those who mocked Mr. Marcus's idea the most. Today I'm ashamed of that. I learned that we should always listen to more experienced people, especially when they warn us about dangers." Mr. Benjamin, retired but still active in business, was direct. "I confess to Mr. Marcus back then, and I confess again now. I mocked his idea because it would hurt my heater sales. It was pure selfishness. Luckily, he didn't hold a grudge and gave me the chance to fix my mistake." David, interviewed at City Hall, spoke about the long-term impact. "Mr. Marcus didn't just save our city from a harsh winter. He taught us to value innovative ideas and to listen to each other. That changed our way of governing and living in community." Mrs. Margaret, 82 years old but still lucid and active, remembered the first moments. My son David believed in Mr. Marcus from day one. I was proud of him for having the courage to support an idea that everyone thought was crazy. It taught my grandson to always do what's right, even when it's hard. Brian, now a successful businessman, explained the technical aspect. Mr. Marcus's idea was brilliant in its simplicity. He identified a real problem, the fragility of our electrical grid, and created a solution that didn't depend on the grid. That's what I call smart engineering. The documentary ended with a long interview with Marcus and Helen on the porch of their house, with the city in the background showing the wooden structures that were now part of the local landscape. "Mr. Marcus," asked the director, "if you could give one piece of advice to young people who have innovative ideas, what would it be?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "Don't give up, even when everyone says you're wrong. But remember, the motivation must be genuine. If you just want to prove you're smart, you'll get frustrated. If you really want to help people, you'll find the strength to continue. And for communities that reject innovative ideas, they should learn to listen, especially older or more experienced people. They might see problems that others can't see yet. Any final message?" Marcus looked at Helen, then at the city below. "That each of us has knowledge or skills that can help others. The world improves when we share what we know instead of keeping it to ourselves." The documentary aired on a Sunday night and had a great impact. The next day, Marcus started receiving phone calls and emails from people all over the United States and from other countries. One call that moved him especially came from a small town in the Midwest. "Mr. Marcus, this is John Mitchell from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I saw the documentary yesterday." "Hello, John. How can I help?" "It's that I have a situation similar to yours. I'm a retired agricultural technician, and I developed a simple system to save water in farming. I presented it to the local producers, but they think it's a waste of time." "And you believe it works?" "I'm sure. I tested it on my small property for 2 years. I saved 60% of the water without reducing production." "John, did you see in the documentary what happened to me at the beginning?" "Yes, I did. Everyone mocked it." "And what happened in the end?" "Everyone came asking for help." "Then you know what you need to do. Keep trying. Keep trying. And when they come to you asking for help, help without holding a grudge." "Mr. Marcus, thank you so much. I needed to hear that." Conversations like that became frequent in Marcus's life. He had become, involuntarily, a kind of mentor for people facing situations similar to his. Helen watched these conversations with admiration. "Marcus, you've become a counselor for people nobody listens to." "It's a responsibility I didn't expect, Helen. But it's an important responsibility. You know what it's like to have an idea rejected by everyone and then see you were right. Your experience can prevent other good ideas from being wasted." "You're right. It's as if our experience has become an example, that it's worth insisting. And it really is worth it, isn't it?" "Yes, it is, especially when the motivation is genuine." At 92 years old, Marcus still received regular letters and visits. Every story he heard strengthened his conviction that he had made the right choices in life. One letter that moved him particularly came from an elementary school teacher from a small town in rural Virginia. "Mr. Marcus, I've been a teacher for 30 years. I developed a method for teaching mathematics that works very well with children who have difficulties. I tried to implement it at school, but the administration said it was a waste of time. I read your book and decided to keep trying. Now I convince parents to let me teach their children after school for free. In 6 months, 15 children who had low grades managed to catch up. The principal finally authorized me to use the method officially. Thank you for teaching me that persistence is worth it." "Helen," said Marcus, showing the letter, "our story continues to inspire people, and it will continue to inspire long after we're no longer here." "How so?" "The book, the documentary, the people who learned our story, all of that will continue to influence other people for generations." "Do you think our experience can really have that impact?" "I'm sure, because it shows that any ordinary person anywhere can make a difference, and that's a powerful message. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. On a spring morning, Marcus was in the backyard when he saw a child watching his house from the fence. She was a girl of about 8 years old, whom he didn't recognize. "Hi," he said, approaching. "What's your name?" "Emily. We just moved into Mr. David's house." "Ah, you're the new tenants. Welcome to the neighborhood." "Sir, my mom said you're famous. Is it true?" Marcus laughed. "I'm not famous, no. I'm just a man who had an idea a long time ago." "What idea?" "An idea to protect people from the cold." "And did it work?" "Yes, it worked." "My mom said you saved the whole city. Is it true?" "I didn't do it alone. Many people helped me." "Sir, can I ask a question?" "Of course." "How do you know when an idea is good?" Marcus crouched down to be at the girl's eye level. "Emily, do you have an idea?" "Yes, I do. I have an idea so the kids at my school don't throw trash on the ground." "What's the idea?" "To put colorful, fun trash cans all over the playground, and to have a competition to see which class throws the least trash on the ground." "And do you think it would work?" "I think so. But the adults at the school think it's silly." "Emily, can I tell you a secret?" "Yes." "When I was younger, all the adults also thought my idea was silly, but I kept believing in it. And what happened? In the end, they found out I was right. So I should keep trying." "Yes, you should. But remember one thing, your idea really needs to help people. If it helps, it's worth fighting for." The girl ran home excitedly. Marcus stood there smiling, remembering Johnny when he was a child. 2 weeks later, Emily came back. "Mr. Marcus, it worked!" "What worked, Emily?" "My idea for the colorful trash cans. I talked to my teacher, and she talked to the principal. They let me do a 1-month trial." "And how's it going?" "Really well. The kids love the colorful trash cans, and the competition is getting everyone excited. Even the adults are praising it." "Congratulations, Emily. You made an important difference at your school." "Mr. Marcus, can I say something?" "Of course." "Thank you for teaching me that I shouldn't give up on my ideas." "Emily, you learned the most important lesson. That age doesn't matter. Good ideas can come from anyone, at any age." "Even from kids?" "Especially from kids. You see problems that we adults sometimes can't see." That night, Marcus told Helen about the conversation with Emily. "Helen, talking to that girl reminded me of something important." "What was it?" "That our story isn't just about me or about our city. It's about the importance of listening to ideas from anyone, regardless of age or social position." "That's true. If people had listened to you from the start, many people would have suffered less. And if the adults at Emily's school had listened to her from the start, the school would have been cleaner a lot sooner." "Marcus, do you think people are learning to listen better?" "I think some are, especially after our story became known. But there's still a lot of work to do." "What kind of work?" "Teaching people that innovation has no age, no diploma, no social class. Anyone can have an idea that changes everything." The following year, at 93 years old, Marcus received a special invitation. North Carolina State University wanted to give him an honorary doctorate degree. "Helen, I don't know if I should accept." "Why not?" "Because I don't have a doctorate, not even a master's. I'm just an engineer with a bachelor's degree." "Marcus, they want to honor you exactly for that, for having done something important without needing academic titles. But it will be strange. Me in the middle of professors with doctorates. It will be inspiring. It will show the students that applied knowledge is worth more than accumulated titles." Marcus accepted the invitation. The ceremony was emotional. The university president gave a speech about the importance of valuing practical knowledge and the social application of engineering. "Mr. Marcus Holland," said the president, "you represent the best of American engineering, creativity, simplicity, and social commitment. Your story teaches us that diplomas and titles are important, but that the wisdom and courage to apply them are even more important." During the ceremony, Marcus was invited to give a speech to the graduating class. "Young engineers," he said, "today you are receiving a diploma that will give you many opportunities. You can work for large companies, earn well, and have successful careers. But remember one thing, the diploma is just a tool. What you do with that tool is what defines the kind of professional you will become. He looked at the audience of attentive young people. If you use your knowledge only to make money, you will have ordinary careers. If you use your knowledge to solve problems for ordinary people, you will have extraordinary careers. How do we know the difference? Asked a female graduate. It's simple. When you finish a project, ask yourselves, how many people will this help? If the answer is many ordinary people and you've chosen right. The speech was recorded and went viral on social media. Marcus, at 93 years old, had become an inspiring influence for young professionals across the country. That night, at the hotel where they were staying in Savannah, Helen made a comment that surprised Marcus. Marcus, have you noticed something? What? You've become exactly the kind of person you always admired. How so? Someone who uses knowledge to help ordinary people, who doesn't care about status or recognition, who does the right thing because it's right, not for a reward. Marcus fell silent, thinking. Helen, do you think I've changed a lot over the years? You haven't changed. You've always been like this. The difference is that now everyone knows. And you, have you changed? Yes, I have. I learned that supporting the people we love is more important than protecting our own peace of mind. I learned that courage is contagious. How so? By seeing you have the courage to defend your ideas, I learned to have the courage to defend you, even when it seemed crazy. They returned to St. Benedict of the South with the feeling that they had completed another important stage. Marcus was now officially Dr. Marcus Holland, but he remained the same simple person he had always been. David met them at the airport with a surprise. The City Council had passed a law creating Community Innovation Day to be celebrated annually on the date of the first meeting, where Marcus presented his proposal. Mr. Marcus, said David, starting next year, every March 15th will be dedicated to presentations of innovative ideas from citizens. No one can ever be ridiculed again for having a different idea. David, that's an exaggerated tribute. It's not a tribute, it's prevention. We want to ensure that no good idea is rejected because of prejudice or ignorance. And how will it work? Any citizen can present a proposal. A technical committee will evaluate its feasibility. If it's viable, the City Hall will support the implementation of a pilot project. What kind of committee? Engineers, educators, social workers, community representatives, people who know how to evaluate both technical and social aspects. The first edition of Community Innovation Day took place 6 months later. 15 proposals were presented, ranging from recycling systems to innovative educational programs. Marcus was invited as the honorary chairman of the evaluation committee. His task was to ensure that all proposals were heard with respect and evaluated with technical criteria. One proposal that impressed him came from a 68-year-old retiree. Mr. Marcus, I developed a system for rainwater reuse in small homes. It's cheap and easy to install. Have you tested it? I tested it at my house for a year. I saved 40% on my water bill. And why did you decide to present it now? Because I saw your story and learned that hiding a good idea is selfish. The proposal was approved for a pilot implementation in 20 homes. If it worked, it would be expanded to the whole city. Another interesting proposal came from a retired teacher. I developed a method to teach children how to handle money from a young age. It's based on games and practical activities. Where did you test it? With my grandchildren and neighbors' children. In 6 months, 8-year-olds already know how to make a basic budget and save money. And do you think it would work in school? I'm sure. But schools always say they don't have time for new things. The proposal was also approved for a pilot test in one class. The third proposal that caught attention came from Emily, the girl with the colorful trash bins, now 9 years old. Mr. Marcus, I have a new idea. What is it this time, Emily? A system for children to teach other children. Those who know more help those who are struggling. How would it work? Every child who gets good grades becomes a tutor for one who is having difficulties. But it's not boring class, it's playing and helping with homework. Emily, that is very smart. Where did you learn about tutoring? I didn't learn. I just thought that sometimes children understand each other better than adults. Emily's proposal was approved unanimously. A 9-year-old child had developed a pedagogical concept that many schools take years to implement. At the end of the day, Marcus addressed the audience present. Folks, today we saw 15 presentations. All were heard with respect. 11 were approved for implementation, and most importantly, no one was ridiculed or discouraged. He looked at the audience, which included people of all ages. This shows our city has learned a valuable lesson. Good ideas can come from anyone at any age. Our responsibility is to listen, evaluate, and, when possible, implement. Mr. Marcus, someone from the audience asked, do you think this system can prevent other good ideas from being wasted? I think it can help a lot, but the most important thing isn't the system. It's the change in mindset. People now know it's worth listening to different ideas. And if an approved proposal doesn't work, then we learn from the mistake and try again. The important thing is to try. Not trying is the serious mistake. That night, Marcus talked with Helen about the event. Helen, today was a special day. Why? Because I saw our city transformed, not just physically with the protective structures, but mentally. People learned to value innovation. What caught your attention the most? Emily's proposal. A 9-year-old child developed a sophisticated pedagogical idea, and everyone took it seriously. That wouldn't have happened before our story. Never. A child would have been told to go play and let the adults decide about education. And now? Now they know that age doesn't determine the quality of an idea. What determines it is whether the idea solves a real problem. 5 years later, at 98 years old, Marcus continued to monitor the results of the Community Innovation Day. 43 proposals had been implemented, from technical systems to innovative social programs. Emily's proposal about child tutors had been adopted by all the city's schools and was being studied by educators from other municipalities. The retired man's rainwater reuse system had been installed in more than 300 homes, generating significant savings in the city's water consumption. The retired teacher's financial education method was being used in 15 schools and had significantly reduced debt among the city's young families. Helen, said Marcus on a fall afternoon, do you realize what has happened? What? Our city has become a community innovation laboratory. People not only implement their own ideas, but they also adapt and improve ideas from other places. It's true, and the most beautiful part is that everyone participates. Children, youth, adults, the elderly. There's no discrimination based on age or education. Helen, can I say something? Of course. I am very proud to have lived to see this. Our experience truly changed the city's mindset. And not just here, Marcus. The book, the documentary, the lectures. Our story has influenced many people in many places. That's true. But here is special because it's where it all began, and because we can see the results every day. Marcus, do you have any regrets? None. I would do everything again exactly the same. Even knowing the difficulties we would face? Especially knowing the difficulties, they were part of the learning, mine and everyone's. That week, Marcus received a special visit. It was a group of graduate engineering students from New York University who were conducting research on social innovation. Professor Holland, said the group leader, we are studying cases where simple technical solutions had a major social impact. And why did you choose our story? Because it shows that effective innovation doesn't need to be complex or expensive, and because it shows the importance of persistence and genuine motivation. What do you want to know specifically? How you maintained motivation during the most difficult times. Marcus thought carefully before answering. Do you know what my main motivation was? We'd like to hear it from you. It wasn't to prove I was right, it wasn't to become famous, it wasn't to make money, it was to prevent people from suffering with a problem I knew how to solve. And was that enough to face all the difficulties? Yes, it was. When your motivation is genuine, you find strength you didn't even know you had. Professor Holland, asked another student, do you have any advice for our generation of engineers? I do. Choose your projects not by what you can gain from them, but by the number of people you can help with them. And if we face resistance like you did, remember that resistance to change is normal. Don't take it personally. Keep the focus on the goal, solving people's problems. Any final words? Yes, the world doesn't need more complicated things. It needs simple, efficient solutions to real problems. You can make a difference if you remember that. The students left inspired. Later, he learned via email that they had shifted the focus of their research to include social aspects in technical projects. At 100 years old, Marcus was honored by the City Hall with a statue in the city's central square. The ceremony was emotional, with the presence of state authorities and representatives from various cities that had implemented the St. Benedict model. "Dr. Marcus," said Mayor David in his speech, "you not only saved our city from a crisis, you taught us that innovation is everyone's responsibility, that good ideas should be heard regardless of who proposes them, and that knowledge only has value when it is applied to help people." The statue showed Marcus with his hands extended, as if explaining a project. On the base it was written, "Marcus Holland, engineer, citizen, visionary, taught us that a good idea can change the world." During the ceremony, a letter was read from a Japanese city that had adapted the protective structure system for earthquakes. The Brazilian concept of simple, low-cost isolation had traveled to the other side of the world. "Helen," said Marcus after the ceremony, "I still can't believe a simple idea has gone so far." "Marcus, good ideas know no borders. They spread because they solve universal problems." "And you? How does it feel to be the wife of a man with a statue in the square?" Helen laughed. "I feel proud, but mostly I feel grateful to have lived this whole story by your side." "Helen, if we could start all over again, would you have supported me from the beginning?" "Marcus, after everything we've lived through, I would support you in any idea aimed at helping people. I've learned that kind of motivation is never wrong." That night, alone at home after the busy ceremony, they sat on the porch to talk. "Marcus, have you ever thought that our story has become bigger than we are?" "How so?" "The statue, the book, the documentary, the cities that implemented the system. Our experience has taken on a life of its own." "It's true. And you know what amazes me the most?" "What?" "That it all started with a meeting where I was publicly humiliated. If someone had told me that day that I'd one day have a statue in the square, I'd have thought they were crazy." "And what does that teach us?" "That we shouldn't judge the future by the problems of the present. Sometimes the worst moments are the beginning of the best transformations." Helen took Marcus's hand. "Marcus, thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up. For insisting even when I doubted. For forgiving everyone who was cruel to you. For turning our life into a story that inspires other people." "Helen, thank you." "For what?" "For coming back when you found out I was right. For supporting me when I needed it most. For walking by my side all these years." They fell silent, contemplating the city below. The lights from houses protected by the wooden structures created a welcoming sight in the night landscape. "Marcus?" "Yes?" "Are you happy with the life we've had?" "Very happy. We managed to make a difference. We left the world a little bit better." "And is that enough?" "It's more than enough. It's all anyone can hope for in life. To have the chance to help other people and to use that chance well. And now, what can we expect from the future? Now we can rest knowing we've fulfilled our mission and that other people will continue the work. Like Emily, David, Johnny. Exactly. The new generation has learned it's worth fighting for ideas that help people. They will have their own battles, their own victories. And will our story inspire them? I hope so. Because it shows that any ordinary person can do extraordinary things when they have genuine motivation and don't give up at the first difficulty. At 102 years old, Marcus remained lucid and active, though he now needed special care. Helen, at 100 years old, remained by his side, caring for him with the same dedication as always. The city of St. Benedict of the South had become a center for studies on community innovation, receiving researchers and students from various parts of the world. Community Innovation Day was now a national event, broadcast live to other cities interested in implementing similar systems. More than 200 proposals had been implemented over the years, transforming St. Benedict of the South into a model city for sustainability, emergency preparedness, and citizen participation. Emily, now 16, was studying engineering through an academic acceleration program. Her proposal for child tutoring had become state public policy. David had been re-elected mayor twice and was now running for state representative with a platform based on community innovation and citizen participation. At 30 years old, Johnny was running a non-governmental organization that brought simple technical solutions to underserved communities across the United States. One spring morning, Marcus was in the backyard when he received an unexpected visit. It was a group of children from the public school. "Mr. Marcus," shouted one of them, "we came to thank you." "Thank me for what, children?" "Our teacher told us your story. She said you taught the city to listen to ideas from everyone." "And why is that important to you?" "Because now, when we have an idea at school, the adults listen. Before, they always said, 'Leave that to the grown-ups.'" A girl of about 8 stepped forward. "Mr. Marcus, I have an idea to help the grandpas and grandmas of the city." "What idea is that?" "A program where children visit the elderly to teach them about computers and cell phones, and the elderly teach old stories to the children." Marcus smiled, moved. "That is a wonderful idea. Have you talked to anyone about it yet?" "We're going to present it at the next Community Innovation Day." "I'm sure it will be approved." The children left excited. Marcus was left thinking about how things had changed. An entire generation was growing up with the mindset that their ideas mattered and could make a difference. That afternoon, Helen found Marcus smiling alone on the porch. "Why are you so happy?" "We received a visit from some children from the school. They are already developing proposals for Community Innovation Day." "And what was the proposal?" Marcus told her about the idea of an exchange between children and the elderly. "Helen, do you realize we've created a culture of innovation that perpetuates itself?" "How so?" "Children are now born knowing their ideas are important. They don't have to go through the humiliation I went through. They grow up with the confidence to propose solutions." "That's wonderful, Marcus." "It is. It's the best part of our whole story. We didn't just solve an immediate problem. We changed the way an entire generation thinks about innovation." "And will that change pass on to their children?" "Absolutely, and to their grandchildren. Our experience created a permanent transformation." That fall, Marcus and Helen celebrated 70 years of marriage. The party was organized by the entire community in the town's central square. "Dr. Marcus and Mrs. Helen," said David in his speech, "you are not just a couple who built a beautiful life together. You are an example of how partnership, persistence, and love for one's neighbor can transform an entire community." During the party, several people gave testimonials about how the couple's story had influenced their lives. Emily, now a promising young woman, spoke on behalf of the children. "Mr. Marcus and Mrs. Helen, you taught me that age doesn't matter when you have a good idea. Because of you, I and other children had our proposals taken seriously. That changed how we see the world and believe in ourselves." Johnny represented the young professionals. "Dr. Marcus, you taught me that engineering serves to solve real people's problems. My entire career is based on that principle I learned when I was a teenager." Mr. Benjamin, now 85 years old, spoke for the business owners. "Dr. Marcus, you taught me that business success cannot come at the expense of the community's well-being. I changed my way of doing business because of that lesson." Mrs. Janet, 82 years old, represented those who initially rejected the proposal. "Dr. Marcus, you taught me that apologizing and admitting mistakes doesn't diminish anyone. On the contrary, it ennobles. And you taught me that it's never too late to change your mind when we discover we were wrong." Brian spoke for the technical professionals. "Dr. Marcus, you taught me that technical knowledge without social responsibility is incomplete. My entire company operates based on this principle." At the end of the celebration, Marcus was invited to give a speech. "Dear friends," he began, his voice still steady despite his 102 years, "when I presented my first proposal in this city more than 15 years ago, I never imagined I would reach this moment." He looked at the crowd gathered in the square. "But I want you to know that the transformation that happened here was not my doing. It was the work of all of you. I merely planted a seed. You watered it, cared for it, and made it bloom. "Dr. Marcus," someone from the crowd shouted, "do you have any final advice for us?" Marcus thought for a moment. Yes. Never lose the ability to listen to different ideas. Never let prejudice or routine prevent you from considering innovative solutions. And always remember, it doesn't matter where an idea comes from. What matters is whether it can help people. And for the next generations, may they keep innovating. May they keep questioning. May they keep proposing solutions to real problems. The world needs people like that. The celebration ended late at night. Marcus and Helen returned home, tired but happy. "Helen," Marcus said before sleeping, "I think we've lived a full life." "Why?" "Because we managed to turn a difficult experience into a useful lesson for other people. We managed to make our pain become collective growth. And we managed to do it together. That's the most important thing. Together." 2 years later, at 104 years old, Marcus Holland passed away peacefully in his home, surrounded by Helen and his closest friends. His passing was mourned by the entire city and by people from many places who had been inspired by his story. The funeral was a national event. Authorities from various states came to pay tribute. Representatives from cities that had implemented the St. Benedict model sent wreaths of flowers. But the most moving tributes came from the ordinary people who had lived alongside him. Emily, now an engineering graduate working on social projects, gave a speech representing the new generations. Dr. Marcus was not just a brilliant inventor, he was a life teacher. He taught us that knowledge serves to help people, that persistence is worthwhile when the cause is just, and that humility is the greatest virtue of a true innovator. David, now a state representative, spoke on behalf of the community. Dr. Marcus transformed our city, but more than that, he transformed our mindset. He left as a legacy a culture of innovation, listening, and mutual respect that will benefit future generations. Johnny, who had become a national reference in social engineering projects, gave the final speech. "Dr. Marcus taught me that engineering is, above all, the art of solving human problems. He taught that simplicity is elegance, that efficiency is beauty, and that the success of a project is measured by the number of people it benefits." Helen, at 102 years old, but still lucid, wanted to speak as well. "Marcus was the most upright man I ever knew. He never held a grudge against those who rejected him. He never became overly proud from those who praised him. He always kept his focus on what was truly important, using his knowledge to help others." The burial was followed by thousands of people. His grave in the city's central square became a place of pilgrimage for engineering students and people interested in social innovation. The headstone bore a simple phrase, "Here rests Marcus Holland, who proved that a good idea can change the world." Helen lived for 3 more years, until 105, always tending to her husband's legacy. She organized student visits, answered letters from people inspired by the story, and kept the memory of Marcus's teachings alive. When Helen passed away, she was buried beside her husband. Her tombstone read, "Helen Holland, lifelong companion dedicated to the common good." Emily took on the responsibility of keeping the couple's story alive. She wrote a more comprehensive biography, organized an archive of letters and documents, and created a foundation to promote social innovation in small communities. David, as a state representative, managed to pass a state law creating the Marcus Holland Community Innovation Program, which offered technical and financial support to cities interested in implementing similar systems. Johnny founded a technical school specialized in social engineering, the application of technical knowledge to solve community problems. The house where Marcus and Helen lived was turned into a museum. The original wooden structure, which had saved the town that first winter, was preserved as a historical monument. 10 years after Marcus's death, St. Benedict of the South was considered one of the most innovative cities in the United States. The model created from their experience had been implemented in over 500 cities across 12 countries. The book, The Idea Nobody Wanted to Hear, continued to be reprinted and translated into new languages. Universities worldwide used the story as a case study in engineering, public administration, and social innovation courses. But perhaps the most important legacy was invisible. An entire generation that had grown up knowing their ideas mattered, that innovation was everyone's responsibility, and that knowledge only had value when applied to help people. The children who had visited Marcus that spring day when he was 102 were now young adults. All pursued careers where they could apply technical knowledge to solve social problems. The girl who had proposed the exchange between children and seniors had become an educator and created intergenerational programs in schools across the state. Emily, at 26, was considered one of the country's most promising young engineers, always developing simple and affordable solutions for complex problems. David had become governor, implementing statewide policies based on the principles he learned from Marcus: active listening, community innovation, and simple solutions. Johnny led an international organization that brought social technologies to underserved communities in developing countries. In each of them, and in hundreds of others influenced by the story of Marcus and Helen, lived the proof that a simple idea, defended with persistence and genuine motivation, can truly change the world. The wooden structure that protected the first house that harsh winter had become much more than a technical solution. It had become a symbol that effective innovation is born from careful observation of real problems, the courage to propose simple solutions, and the persistence to defend them even when everyone says they are wrong. And in the small town of St. Benedict of the South, in the mountains of North Carolina, every winter when wooden structures protect hundreds of families from the cold, people remember that sometimes the best solutions are the simplest, and that the greatest obstacle to innovation is not a lack of technology, but a lack of willingness to listen to different ideas. The story of Marcus Holland continues to inspire new generations of innovators, reminding everyone that shared knowledge is multiplied knowledge, that humility is strength, not weakness, and that true success is measured not by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we achieve for others. End of story. Now we want to know your opinion on this moving story. Tell us in the comments which part touched you the most and whether you believe Marcus made the right decisions. Your participation is very important to us. If this story inspired you, leave your like and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching narratives like this one. Thank you very much for joining us.